Hello.
I never thought I'd find myself here, sitting in the dimly lit living room, staring at the blank television screen while the echoes of my past life still rattled in my head. My ex-husband was gone. He had left me for someone younger, someone fresh and new, and all I was left with was the weight of years wasted on a man who never truly valued me. The betrayal stung deeper than I thought possible, seeping into every corner of my mind, making it impossible to breathe without feeling the weight of it pressing down on my chest. Days turned into weeks, and I barely noticed. I drifted through life in a haze of apathy, my body moving but my mind absent. Eating felt like a chore. Sleeping was a battle. I had become a ghost in my own home, drowning in the silence. But then, there was him. My son Daniel. My sweet, kind-hearted boy who had grown into a man before my eyes, though I had been too consumed by my own pain to notice. He had just turned 20 in the prime of his youth, yet instead of living his life, he spent his days watching over me. He had always been observant, too much for his own good. He saw through my forced smiles, through my empty reassurances, and instead of believing my lies he acted. Started with small things. "Mom, I made dinner," he said one evening, placing a plate in front of me. I had barely eaten all day but I just wasn't hungry. "I'm not. Just a few bites," he insisted, sitting beside me at the table. His blue eyes, so much like mine, held a quiet determination that I couldn't ignore. I sighed and picked up my fork. He watched me eat, making sure I finished. And strangely, I did. The food had no real taste, but for the first time in weeks, I didn't feel as hollow. Then he started taking me outside. "Let's go for a walk," he said one afternoon, standing by the door, keys in hand. I shook my head. "I don't feel like it." "I know. But you need it." His voice was firm, but there was warmth in it too. I wanted to refuse, but something in the way he looked at me made it impossible. So I put on my coat and let him lead me outside. The crisp air was biting but refreshing. We walked in silence at first, and then, slowly I started talking. Just little things, memories, old stories, complaints about life. And he listened. Really listened. It became a routine. Day by day he pulled me out of my shell. When I cried, he sat beside me without a word. His presence enough to anchor me. When I couldn't sleep, he stayed up with me, watching old movies until exhaustion took over. When I felt like disappearing, he reminded me, through gestures, through words, through his unwavering love, that I was still here, that I still mattered. One evening, as we sat together in the living room, Daniel spoke softly, almost hesitantly. "I hate seeing you like this, Mom," he admitted. "You've always been the strongest person I know. You don't deserve this." His words broke something in me. A fresh wave of tears welled in my eyes, but this time I didn't hold them back. I leaned into him, letting the warmth of his embrace ground me. "You're all I have left," I whispered. He pulled back slightly, his hands resting gently on mine. "And you're all I have too." And in that moment, for the first time in what felt like forever, I felt a spark of something I thought I had lost. Hope. I hadn't truly looked at my son in years. Not really. I suppose that happens when life pulls you in different directions. Him, growing into adulthood, finding himself, and me, trapped in a life I thought was secure until it shattered beneath my feet. But now I saw him. Daniel had always been an old soul. Even as a child, he had this quiet intuition, this ability to sense emotions long before words were spoken. And now, as I stumbled through the wreckage of my failed marriage, he was watching me, not in a way that felt suffocating or intrusive, but in a way that made me realize how deeply he cared. I would catch him studying me from across the room when he thought I wasn't looking. His brows would knit together in quiet concern whenever I sat too long in silence, lost in my thoughts. When I woke up in the morning, I'd find little things. Coffee already made, a blanket draped over me from the night before, a book left on the table as if suggesting I lose myself in its pages instead of my sadness. He was gentle in a way that felt both comforting and unfamiliar. I had spent so many years in a marriage where tenderness faded into routine, where love was more obligation than feeling. But with Daniel there was no obligation, just genuine, unwavering care. And then one evening he surprised me. It was raining outside, soft and steady, the kind that made the world feel hushed and peaceful. I sat curled up on the couch, my thoughts wandering as usual, when suddenly, the sound of music filled the room. I blinked, startled. Daniel stood by the speaker, a mischievous smile playing at his lips. "Dance with me," he said, holding out a hand. I let out a dry laugh. "What? Dance with me?" he repeated, stepping closer. "Come on, when was the last time you danced?" Scoff. "Probably at my wedding." "Exactly." He grinned. "That means you're long overdue." I shook my head, trying to suppress the small smile threatening to form. "Daniel, But he wasn't taking no for an answer. Before I could protest, he gently pulled me up from the couch. The warmth of his hand around mine sent a strange feeling through me, like I was being lifted from the heavy fog I had been living in. The song was soft, melodic, the kind of tune that made you want to close your eyes and sway. And so I did. First it felt ridiculous. I was stiff, awkward, my movements hesitant. But then Daniel twirled me, an exaggerated silly spin that made me stumble into him, and I couldn't help it. I laughed. For the first time in what felt like years I laughed. A real, unguarded, belly-deep laugh. Daniel grinned, clearly proud of himself. "See, you're still in there somewhere." I shook my head, chuckling. "You're ridiculous." "Maybe." He shrugged playfully. "But at least I got you to smile." And just like that, something shifted. The grief was still there, lingering in the background like an old wound that refused to fully heal. But for a moment, it wasn't the only thing I felt. For a moment I felt alive. Daniel didn't let go of my hand right away. We swayed gently, moving with the rhythm, the room around us fading into the background. I rested my head against his shoulder, exhaling softly. "Thank you," I whispered. He didn't say anything, just held me a little closer, his warmth seeping into me like a quiet promise. And for the first time in a long time I believed that maybe, just maybe, I would be okay. The song faded into the quiet hum of the rain outside, but we didn't let go right away. For the first time in months I felt lighter, as if the weight of my heartbreak, my loneliness, and my grief had momentarily loosened its grip on me. Daniel pulled back slightly, his eyes searching mine, as if making sure I was still with him, that I hadn't drifted back into the dark place I had been living in. And then, his lips quirked into that familiar mischievous smile. "You know," he mused, tilting his head, "you used to be a lot more fun." I raised an eyebrow at him. "Excuse me. I'm just saying." His grip on my hand tightened ever so slightly. "There was a time when you used to laugh more, smile more. Now," he sighed dramatically, "you're all moody and tragic." Scoff. "Oh, I'm sorry. Am I not entertaining enough for you?" He smirked. "Nope." And before I could react, his hands shot forward, pressing into my sides. A jolt of surprise shot through me. And then, laughter. Real, uncontrollable, bubbling laughter. I gasped, twisting away from him, but he was relentless. His fingers danced along my ribs, pressing into my stomach, finding every weak spot he had spent years discovering as a child. "Daniel, stop!" I shrieked, breathless between giggles. "No way," he teased, grinning. "You're laughing, which means I'm winning." I squirmed, trying to push him away, but he was stronger now, no longer the little boy I used to scoop up effortlessly. Somehow, in the midst of our playful struggle, we tumbled backward. My feet tangled with his, and the next thing I knew, we both collapsed onto the couch, limbs in a tangled mess. I landed half on top of him, breathless, my heart pounding from both the tickling and the sheer absurdity of it all. For a moment, there was only silence, the sound of our laughter lingering in the air, the rhythmic patter of the rain outside, the warmth of his body beneath mine. It was an odd sensation. Daniel had grown. I could feel it now in a way I hadn't fully processed before. The firm muscle beneath my hands, the broadness of his shoulders, the way he had become a man while I had been too lost in my own world to notice. He was still smiling, his chest rising and falling beneath me, and when I looked down, our eyes met. Something shifted. His hand, which had been resting against my waist, flexed slightly. I became acutely aware of the closeness between us, the way my fingers had instinctively gripped his shirt, the warmth radiating between us. A flicker of something unfamiliar passed through his expression. It was gone just as quickly as it appeared, masked by another teasing grin. "You okay there, Mom?" he asked, voice low and amused. I exhaled, shaking off whatever strange moment had just passed. "Yeah," I said, rolling my eyes as I swatted his arm. "But you are so childish." He laughed, sitting up slightly, forcing me to shift off of him. "Maybe," he admitted. But at least I got you to stop looking like a tragic widow for 5 minutes. I narrowed my eyes at him. You do realize I actually am a tragic widow, right? He winced dramatically. Yeah, but, doesn't mean you have to look the part all the time. I shook my head, unable to stop the smile from tugging at my lips. Daniel had always had this way of pulling me out of my darkest moments, even as a child. Whenever I was stressed or upset or overwhelmed, he would find ways to make me laugh, to remind me that life wasn't just sorrow and obligations. And now, even after everything, he was still doing it. I sighed, leaning back against the couch, staring up at the ceiling. You're impossible, you know that? Yep. He stretched, draping an arm over the back of the couch. And you love me for it. I glanced at him, smiling softly. Yeah, I murmured. I really do. His teasing expression softened for a brief moment, and something warm flickered in his eyes. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't alone. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't want to be. The house still smelled of rain, the scent drifting in from the open windows. The laughter from our playful scuffle on the couch still lingered in the air, warming something inside me that had been cold for far too long. Felt different, lighter, alive. Daniel stretched. His body relaxed in a way I hadn't seen in years. You know what we should do? He asked suddenly, his eyes glinting with mischief. I narrowed my eyes suspiciously. That tone never means anything good. He grinned. Come on, it'll be fun. Define fun. He hopped up from the couch, grabbing my wrist and pulling me toward the kitchen. We're making something, he declared. Making what exactly? He opened the cupboard, pulling out a bag of flour with a dramatic flourish. Something weird. I blinked at him. That's not an answer. Look, it's been way too long since we did something completely ridiculous together. He plopped the flour onto the counter. And I happen to think that cooking disasters are highly underrated bonding experiences. I crossed my arms, pretending to consider it. So, you're saying you want to destroy my kitchen? He smirked. Absolutely. I sighed, but the truth was I didn't want to say no. The air between us had shifted tonight, but not in a bad way. Felt good. Natural. For the first time in forever, I wasn't thinking about my ex-husband. I wasn't mourning what was lost. I wasn't drowning in the past. I was here in this moment with my son. And I didn't want it to end. All right, fine, I relented. But if we set anything on fire, you explain it to the firefighters. Daniel grinned triumphantly. Deal. We made an absolute mess. Neither of us really knew what we were doing. There was no recipe, no plan. Just laughter, chaos, and an ever-growing pile of ingredients on the counter. More flour, Daniel declared, dumping a ridiculous amount into the bowl. I swatted at his arm. Are you trying to suffocate us in white powder? It adds character. Adds character. Scoffed. It's a dough disaster. He grinned and, before I could react, swiped his flour-covered fingers across my cheek. Gasped. Daniel. He took a step back, his eyes twinkling with amusement. Oh, you did not just do that. He smirked. What are you gonna do about it? I grabbed a handful of flour and flung it at him. It hit him square in the chest, leaving a white mark on his dark shirt. His mouth dropped open. Oh, it's war now. Before I could run, his hands were on my waist, spinning me around as he smeared flour into my hair, down my arms, across my shoulders. I shrieked, laughing too hard to fight him off. We stumbled together, both of us covered in flour, breathless from laughter. I hadn't laughed like this in years. Maybe ever. For the first time in so long I felt alive. I collapsed against the counter, my stomach aching from laughter. Daniel leaned beside me, his arms dusted in white, his smile wide and unguarded. You look ridiculous, I told him, shaking my head. He grinned. So do you. I wiped some of the flour off my cheek, only to realize it made no difference. I was completely covered. This was a terrible idea. The best ideas usually are. I rolled my eyes, but I couldn't stop smiling. Somehow, despite our complete lack of planning, we actually managed to make something edible. It wasn't pretty. It was a lumpy, oddly shaped, slightly burned creation that neither of us could quite identify. But we sat together at the kitchen table, still dusted in flour, and took hesitant bites. I chewed thoughtfully. Weird. Daniel nodded. Definitely weird. We stared at each other for a long moment. And then we burst into laughter. It was ridiculous. Everything about this night was ridiculous. But that's what made it so perfect. Daniel leaned back in his chair, watching me with something warm in his gaze. You look good when you laugh, you know. I blinked, caught off guard. What? I mean it. He reached across the table, brushing some flour from my arm. You've been so sad. But when you laugh, you look like you again. I swallowed the lump in my throat. I guess I forgot how, I admitted quietly. His eyes softened. Then I'll just have to keep reminding you. Something about the way he said it sent warmth curling through my chest. I looked at him, really looked at him. My son. My little boy. Except he wasn't a boy anymore. Somewhere along the way he had grown into a man who cared for me in a way no one else ever had. And for the first time I allowed myself to see it, to feel it. I wasn't alone. And maybe, just maybe, I never would be again. The night wasn't over yet. Daniel leaned back in his chair, the last remnants of our strange lumpy dish sitting between us, and stretched his arms above his head. He looked at me with a grin, one I recognized all too well. It was the same look he used to give me when he had some grand idea as a child, usually one that involved getting into trouble. What? I asked, narrowing my eyes at him suspiciously. He smirked. Put on something warm. We're going for a ride. He frowned. A ride. He stood up, brushing flour from his clothes as he grabbed his keys off the counter. Yeah. On my bike. I blinked. Wait, you mean your motorcycle? He nodded. Yep. I hesitated. I don't know, Daniel. I haven't been on a bike since. Well, ever. His smirk softened into something gentler. That's the point, Mom. He took a step closer, his voice low and coaxing. You need to feel something again. Something real. Something outside of this house. I bit my lip, glancing toward the window. The city lights glowed softly in the distance, flickering like little promises of something more. When was the last time I had done something spontaneous? Something reckless. Something that made me feel alive. I exhaled slowly. Fine. But if you crash, I'm haunting you forever. He grinned. Deal. Bundled in one of Daniel's extra jackets. It was too big on me, the sleeves hanging past my hands. I followed him outside. The air was crisp, the pavement still damp from the earlier rain, the streetlights casting a golden glow over the quiet city. And there it was. His motorcycle. Sleek, black, polished to perfection. It looked like something out of a movie, dangerous and thrilling all at once. Daniel swung a leg over effortlessly. His movements practiced and smooth. He turned to me, patting the seat behind him. Hop on. I hesitated for half a second before gripping his shoulder for balance and sliding onto the seat. He reached behind him, grabbing my hands, and wrapped them firmly around his waist. Hold on tight, he murmured. I could feel the warmth of him beneath my fingers, the solid strength of his back pressed against me. And then the engine roared to life. The vibration rumbled through my body as he eased the bike forward. My breath caught as we rolled down the driveway onto the street and then we were flying. The wind rushed past my face as Daniel sped up, the city lights blurring into streaks of gold and blue. The world around us became nothing but movement. Fast, endless, exhilarating. My arms tightened around him instinctively, pressing myself closer, and he let out a low chuckle. You okay back there? He called over the wind. I laughed. Actually laughed, the sound bright and uninhibited. I think so. We wove through the city, past glowing billboards and quiet alleyways, past parks where couples walked hand in hand, past bridges where the water shimmered beneath us. It was beautiful. Not just the city but the feeling. The speed, the freedom, the way the wind tangled in my hair and made me forget about everything. My heartbreak, my loneliness, my fear of moving forward. For the first time in years I wasn't thinking. I was living. After what felt like forever, but also not nearly long enough. Daniel pulled the bike into a small overlook, high above the city. The skyline stretched before us, lights twinkling like scattered stars. He killed the engine, and silence settled between us, except for the distant hum of the city below. I climbed off first, my legs a little shaky, my heart still pounding. Daniel chuckled, watching me with amusement. You good? I exhaled, shaking my head with a breathless laugh. That was incredible. Told you. I turned to him, my smile lingering. You always have to be right, don't you? He grinned. It's a curse. I rolled my eyes, but there was no annoyance behind it. Only warmth. We stood there for a while, side by side, watching the city. Then, out of nowhere, Daniel spoke. You know you're beautiful, right? I stiffened slightly, caught off guard. What? He turned to me, his expression unreadable, but his voice was steady. Ooh. You're beautiful, Mom. I swallowed, something tightening in my chest. Daniel. I mean it. He shifted slightly, angling his body toward me. I know you don't see it right now. I know you feel broken, like you're not enough, like... He exhaled sharply, shaking his head. But you are. I looked away, my throat tight. You don't have to say that. I want to say it. I hesitated, staring out at the city, trying to gather myself. Daniel had always been caring, always been protective. But lately something had changed. Or maybe I was just allowing myself to see it now. The way he looked at me. The way he touched me, gentle, lingering, careful. The way he watched me like he was memorizing every moment. I felt something warm brush against my hand. I glanced down. Daniel's fingers were just barely touching mine, hesitant, waiting. Could pull away. I should pull away. But I didn't. Instead, I let my fingers curl slightly, just enough to close the space between us. He exhaled softly, almost as if he had been holding his breath. Neither of us spoke. The city below carried on, unaware of the moment unraveling between us. And for the first time, I wasn't afraid of what came next. I wasn't afraid at all.
Bye.